Chapter 31, The Exeter Arrives. Early the next morning, as the Exeter was making the last turn into Belmont Bay, Captain Artemis was not prepared for the scene that unfolded before him. It seemed incredulous that on such a gloriously beautiful morning he would be greeted with the smoldering remains of what once was his father's greatest treasure. The wings of fortune was no more. Kathrine Artemis had just stepped up onto the command deck of the Exeter after hearing the news of the Fortune's fate from the crewmen below decks. Even so, she had to see it with her own eyes. "Father, how could this have happened?" she gasped, seeing the sight of what was left of the Fortune, smoldering just above the waterline. "I have no idea, but I intend to find out. We left her in what I assumed were capable hands, but now I see I was mistaken," hissed Captain Henry Artemis from between clenched teeth. Mr. McGregor could be heard shouting from below. "Captain," hollered McGregor, "I see several dozen of the crew standing on the docks near the shore, sir," he continued, looking through his binoculars. "It looks like Mr. Dominguez and several others." "Any sign of Rolando, or Wilkes, or our Mr. Montez?" interrupted Artemis. "No, sir. Not yet," replied McGregor. "Very well, Deeks, bring it in," ordered Artemis. "And prepare to welcome Mr. Dominguez and his men on board the Exeter. As soon as they are on deck, send Mr. Dominguez to my quarters." "Aye, Captain," echoed Deeks. Down in his stateroom, Captain Artemis and his daughter Kathrine were looking over their grandfather's map as they heard a knock on the door. "Come in," they echoed. Mr. McGregor stood in the doorway a moment. "It's Mr. Dominguez, sir," he said. "Let him in." McGregor held the door as Mr. Dominguez stepped into Captain Artemis's quarters looking like something the cat had just dragged in the front door, while the dog grabbed, chewed it up some more, and then carried it out the back door to bury in the yard. "Sir," croaked a rather disheveled-looking Dominguez. Artemis looked him over carefully for several seconds before saying a word. "What the hell happened to my ship, Mr. Dominguez?" "I want the whole story," Artemis demanded. As Dominguez began to share with both Artemises the events of the last 2 days, one factor became clear as the story unfolded. Artemis never liked Rolando to begin with, but he never dreamed he would be one to screw things up so badly. In a way, in a huge way, Rolando did him a favor. But the loss of the Fortune was hard for Artemis to accept. He could accept easily the loss of Rolando, or even Montez for that matter. He never cared for either one of them anyway, although Montez's whereabouts were still a mystery, since no remains had been found, but the loss of the Fortune, that was like losing one's own flesh and blood. After Dominguez completed his report and had been dismissed from Artemis's quarters, Kathrine stood up from the chair she had been sitting in, looking her father in the eye. She had a strange expression for a moment, as if in deep thought. "Well, tell me, what are you thinking?" Henry asked. "I'm thinking that Rolando, in his own strange way, did you a huge service. With the company out of your way, you are free once again to do what you do best," said Kathrine. "My thoughts exactly," continued Henry, "and with all the gold we found in the capital city up north, we can go anywhere we want now, build a new ship if we want to," Artemis mused. "By the way, you never told me if you found anything in the presidential vaults this morning after you returned. Any luck?" Henry grinned, chuckling to himself quietly for a moment, and then walked to his desk and pulled out an old large leather-bound notebook and tossed it down onto his desk in front of Kathrine. "We found some antiquities, some historical treasures, a few old gold coins, but this is the real find," he crowed, eyes fixed on the notebook with a slight grin still frozen on his face. Kathrine, undaunted, looked it over and shrugged slightly. "Just an old book." "This is the treasure you went off to find?" she asked sarcastically. Henry started to open the book. "No, not just any old book, my dear. This book, I believe, is the one and only presidential book of secrets, a law book, a diary of sorts, kept by all the American presidents since perhaps even Washington himself. And now I have it." Kathrine, still looking unimpressed, pursed her lips and nodded slightly, then began to turn around to leave, pausing first. "Well, Father, I don't know about you, but I haven't eaten all morning and I'm starved. So, have fun, enjoy reading your little notebook, Father." By noon, the men had loaded the remaining crates of extra cargo that had been offloaded by the Fortune into the holds of the Exeter as Captain Artemis was preparing to move on. Some of the crew had expressed a desire for revenge, but Artemis knew better than to attempt such a frivolous waste of time and energy. Besides, as hard as it would be, dealing with the loss of the Fortune, he saw this more as an opportunity rather than a setback. Captain Artemis stood on the command deck as Deeks made his way up the steps, pausing to the side of the captain as Artemis turned to Deeks. "Yes, Mr. Deeks?" "Captain, we are fully loaded and ready to make way, sir," boomed Deeks. "Very well, I want to address the crew myself with my new orders, if you don't mind, Deeks." "Not at all, sir," said Deeks, motioning for Artemis to step up to the front of the command deck. Artemis stepped up to the front railing as he boomed the orders for the entire crew to hear. "Gentlemen, I know you have all been wondering what our next assignment would be, and I know that there are some of you who have a desire to avenge the Fortune and punish those who would commit this horrendous act. There will be time for that later. Winter is coming soon. As you well know by now, the old capital city was good to us. And we have our bellies full." A cheer went up from the crew. "Enough, I say, of this dreadful, savage country," Artemis continued. "Let us leave this dreary place behind us now, and set sail for warmer waters, soft women, and ice-cold beer." A crescendo of cheers arose from the crew and continued as Artemis added one final command. "As of now, the Exeter is setting sail for Rio de Janeiro, so, Godspeed, gentlemen."
You have been listening to Caleb Elgin, The Rise of the Clans by David E. Farmer. Also available on Amazon Kindle. More chapters coming soon. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.